logging in and attending this morning. We're going to get started with our webinar. The topic of today is the top 5 quality managers' headaches resolved. And your host, myself, Eric Van Essen, and next to me is
Scott Lidgy.
Perfect. So we're going to walk you through some of the work that we've done with quality managers, and hopefully you get a few things out of here that can help you with your roles. We'll start off with just a little bit on the quality manager role. We're going to go through the top quality manager headaches, and we'll wrap it up with a little bit about Javelin and our approach to help solve these problems. So when it comes to a quality manager role, I thought we'd just start with a little bit of a definition. At the end of the day, I'm not a quality manager. I just work with a lot of quality managers. So you guys out there know your role much better than I do. But I thought I'd put up just some snippets of a job description that I pulled online, just to set a little bit of a tone. And really in a nutshell, it's just a tremendous amount of enforcing needs to happen, setting up procedures. It's a lot about processes, and of course related to the design, setting up critical limits, making sure that we're manufacturing there as well. So there's just a tremendous amount of tasks, and I'm not envious of the role because there's just a huge amount of stuff that I know that you guys out there need to juggle as a quality manager to be successful. So when it comes to the top headaches, there's a lot of stuff that different quality managers are juggling, but there are some recurring themes that I see over and over again between different quality managers. So we're just going to walk through, what I consider the top 5, and I tend to hear them the most often. I didn't do an official vote, so maybe we'll adjust this if I get different feedback off these sort of webinars. But the first one as a headache is related to ISO certification. I hear this time and time again is getting, and not only getting, but maintaining that ISO certification. And really it comes down to ISO certification, as we're all aware, it's about the creation and abidance of your procedures. So it's about how can you create these repeatable processes and make sure that they are repeatable, but more importantly, how can we enforce them? So that's where that whiplashing comes in. So recommended medication, for this particular migraine, what we do need to do is we do need to pass information along in a structured way, ideally electronically, because the world is electronic nowadays from person to person. We do need to control access to the information, make sure that the right people have the right permissions at the right time. And we do, what we don't want to do is set this stuff in stone and then forget about it. We need to make sure that these procedures adapt as the company's evolving. We always need to improve, but the biggest challenge is when you do adapt it, how do you enforce that new change? That's one of the biggest headaches, is when your processes change, how do you make sure everybody's following it? So we thought we'd show a little bit of a snippet on how we've been addressing that with our clients.
So we're going to jump in and take advantage of SOLIDWORKS document management solution, Enterprise PDM. And so right off the bat, you're going to see some control here, some security involved. So to be able to access our data, we have to log in into the system. So I'm logging in as Scott. So Scott is like a designer. So as I start to dig in through some folder structure here, let's navigate in, and you'll see how folders are really no different than what you're used to today inside your standard Windows environment. But there is a lot of information available to us and a lot of control. First thing you might want to control is how do these folder structures get set up. So actually, it doesn't matter where I am in my vault. If I just use Windows functions to right-click, we're going to start a new project. And so now when I launch this project, we've got automation included here. So things like grabbing the next project number. So we can control that we're not duplicating any part numbers, or in this case, project numbers. Maybe we'll give it a name here. Giving drop-downs facilitates data input, make sure we don't miss any information that might be pertinent to the project. And then hitting OK allows the system now to go in and put folders where I typically like to see them, which is under project by date. And here's my new project being created. And you can even have templated documents within that to save yourself a lot of time.
One note on that is just how easy it is to standardize, right? So that's at the end of the day, when it comes to procedures and ISO certification, it's about, in my opinion, it's about making it as easy as possible to work in a standardized way. And that's in a nutshell what it's all about.
So if we go into another project that's been worked on for a while, and take a look at some of these documents and the information that's available to us. Keeping in mind also that, there's lots of different departments that you may want to have access to these documents, but at the right time. So for example, maybe the shop floor, if they came to this folder right now, they wouldn't see any of this data currently because we haven't approved it yet. If we start to look at some of these documents, all the references to other documents pertaining to this project, we can track. So if you take, for example, this drawing file that's currently in an approved state, we can see that it has a PDF reference to it, so we can browse over to that PDF. It could be in a different folder location, but it's nice and quick and easy to do it this way and navigate there. So maybe it's the PDF that's going to be used for a quality report potentially, or maybe it's for sales. So it's in the right place for them to access, but we know that it's part of this project all the time. If we look at, let's say, the history on that project, what's happened to it through its life, we can go and backtrack and see that, who's been working on these documents. We can see that it was released at a revision A at some point, and we're currently sitting at a revision B. And being able to access that history is very important if we have to go back for a warranty issue or something. It's all there. But again, you're controlling who can see which version of this. If it's sales or shop floor, potentially you probably only want them to see the latest version, and that's set up in the system. Let's push something through workflow, and that's where we get the biggest bang for the buck as far as control and automating and enforcing your procedures. So if you take a look at, again, maybe at the one that's currently been released, and we look at the workflow, this is how we actually create workflows inside EPDM. And you can see in red there where it currently sits. These workflows can be as simple or as complex as your process needs it to be. If you need parallel approval processes, so 3 people need to sign off before that document moves on, you can set that up. So this is a pretty simple one. It's, it's a work in progress. It's gone through waiting for approval and currently sits in an approved state. If we look at another document, let's try that again. There we go. You can sort of see that that one is currently sitting in a work in progress state. And so I'm going to actually push this through and have it approved. Right? So right now you'll see that everybody knows actually that Scott's working on that project, which is nice. Again, some control, so we're not having multiple people working on the same document and overwriting data. So if somebody else needed it, they could call me or email me quite quickly. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to check this into the system because I'm finished making those design changes to that product, and now push it through my workflow. And you'll watch what happens to our state here. We're going to say I'm going to submit this for approval in this case. My system's set up where I'm going to actually select who I'm working with, so I'm going to notify Mike, who's a manager, of these changes. So we're just going to say new design, and the comment will be please review. So the system now pushes that along, and lots of things could be happening here. Security is going to change up. For example, in a waiting for approval state, myself as the designer, I can no longer check it out. I'm no longer part of the workflow. I've passed the control on to the management team.
This is where it comes down, or you see a big difference in the effort it takes to enforce procedures. By automatically changing permissions along the way, there's almost zero enforcement required because it's just defined by your process.
So we're going to log off the system as Scott, and now in another office potentially, or I'm going to log back in today as Mike, the manager. Now he gets a notification. This is the integrated messaging system, so he knows right away that there's work for him waiting. It gives me hyperlinks directly to the file, so we're not duplicating and getting confused as to which is the latest document by attaching it to a standard email, which would be a more traditional process. Another great thing is, let's say we deleted the email, he forgets where things are located. The searching capabilities in here are very quick to pull up any information you're looking for. So, maybe it was an engineering search we were looking at, remembering that it's not just by file name, it's by the project, by the description. Any information on those documents we can search by. And you could have favorites set up as well to speed this up even further. So as a manager, I'm always looking for things waiting for my approval. And there we quickly come down and see the document that we just sent off. And he could review that inside the little previewer, which is great, or open up in a full-blown previewer and be able to do things like markup and send that on if we need to make changes. You'll notice that there's a lot of information still missing in the title block, like a release provision. It hasn't been signed off yet, but I'm going to let the workflow inside the system do all that work for me. So again, as the manager, if you're happy with this process, we push it through the workflow and approve it. If you weren't, we can have it loop back through our workflow and send it back to the engineering team to make those changes. So today we'll approve it. Ours is password protected, so that not just anybody can approve documents in your company.
So I've talked with many clients on the quality side that have obtained ISO certification, but before they implemented enterprise PDM, it used to take a couple days to go through an audit, and after they implemented ePDM, it takes half an hour to an hour because they just prove that they have these processes in place, and it's and all the work is it's so easy to prove that the processes are followed because they're followed automatically. So it really is a remarkable difference and completely eliminates that headache.
So you can see now that I've approved that document, down this bar here, it's populated the fields correctly with the revision stamp. Full history has been maintained, and again, security might be changing up on these documents, where now this has been set to read only for engineering. Maybe the sales and manufacturing floor can maybe view the drawing files, but just the drawing files, not the actual models. Or again, we can automate other processes like sending, let's say, parts lists or bills of materials to different business systems like your ERP or MRP system. Also, my system is currently set up where I don't want the sales team looking at this drawing. So what I have it do is create that drawing, and actually, just to keep everything on track here, let's go back to that folder. So I want you to see that when we approved that, what also happened in the background was it's actually generating a PDF, and I can see that in its where used tab here. And if I browse over to it, you can see that it's in a folder called Release Drawings that I've opened up to more people in the company possibly. And then there, with the preview, is the latest and greatest PDF.
Yeah, the beauty about it is that it not only is enforcing policies and procedures to help with ISO, but it's also saving a lot of time along the way too, right? All this stuff is typically done manually today, and it just eliminates that. Moving along, headache number two, changing gears a little bit, is we hear this a lot lately, is manufacturing to specifications. So in the past, we were always great at creating SolidWorks drawings. We're pretty good at helping customers manufacture quickly from those drawings or 3D models, but how do you make sure that it's actually done correctly? So that's where, there's a couple causes of this headache or migraine, and the biggest one I would say is the risk of inferior components making it through. So if those are not caught and inspected correctly and end up on your products and there's field failures, that's a big deal, and that's causing huge headaches if there is risks there. And then of course, if the risk is reduced, it's likely that there's a lot of time that's in there to create the required documentation. So to help with this area, what we're really working with a lot of clients to do is to leverage industry standard inspection documentation so that it can be created in just a fraction of the time. And we're doing it based on the SolidWorks drawings right from within SolidWorks with a new tool that got released last year, SolidWorks Inspections. So a huge time saver and really helps out on the boosting that quality on the manufacturing side.
All right, so let's take a look at how quickly we can go from that engineering drawing to a inspection report and balloon drawing from within SolidWorks. So again, back inside of our PDM system, let's go into a current project, and we'll open up this drawing file.
If there are any questions along the way, feel free to punch them in the questions, and we'll do our best to address them as we go here.
So once you have a drawing sort of ready to go, complete, what we can do is maybe for quality, there's some specific dimensions we're concerned with that we want to make sure are inspected, so we could maybe add those symbols to our drawing. And now we want to start to generate the inspection report and balloon drawings. You'll see how fast this happens because we have things like templates preset. How do you want the inspection report to look? What type of ballooning do we want to utilize? Then we're going to start to give the project some information. So things like part number. We're going to leverage all the metadata that we typically have inside of our SOLIDWORKS. So maybe for name, we'll grab another field. What revision are we at? And include any other information as far as lot sizes and so on that's pertinent to the inspection process. We'll go to the next step. Now we want to start to analyze the drawing and pull out anything that we want as characteristics. So whether those are the GD&T symbols, notes, and then what sort of dimensions do you want to use. We can just automatically select everything, or today we're just going to use the ones that we have designated as inspection dimensions. When we hit the check mark, we now just automatically balloon. You may notice there that with the little flash, we have a multi-sheet drawing, so it's catching both sheets. I now have this list of characteristics that if we want to tweak it in any way as far as giving it some more information, like is this a key dimension, what is the process, and what's the method possibly of taking this measurement, maybe a digital caliper in this case. Once you're happy with all the setup, now we can do a couple of things. One would be to save that as an inspection project that we'll do more with in the next step. But probably more importantly is let's actually get to a stage where we can actually do the inspection. So you might want to export a finished PDF, which is nicely ballooned now. And then we're also going to pull out or create the report. So you'll notice that this is going to be a nice Excel file that's got all the characteristics built in, all of our upper and lower limits, and then ready to start putting in our results.
Yeah, if you are, like I said before, there's two types of companies. Ones that don't have the sort of documentation but could use it, and they're just leveraging the standards, or there's ones that are creating the sort of documentation but are doing it in just a huge amount more time. So it's all about, can we reduce the time and leverage those industry standards? So moving on to number 3 is on the supplier side. So it's one thing to create inspection reports, and it's great that you can use them to track the quality that's coming in of those parts. But how do you use that, or especially over longer periods of time, to track and make good decisions to boost quality related to suppliers? So it's a large amount of data there, and how do you amalgamate it all together? So to fix this particular migraine, what we're recommending to clients is to gather and track those inspections, again, within the Enterprise PDM Vault. The benefit there is that we can track that mass amount of data in a nice centralized database, and then we can leverage the searching capabilities that Scott was showing you before, but specifically do it for the quality or for the inspection side. So Enterprise PDM is completely flexible to search and narrow down on different types of data. So let's see a little bit of that in action to see how it can be related to supplier management.
All right, so the first thing that I'm going to do is maybe set up a new quality project. So again, just some automation we're going to use here to, we'll go to new quality. Let's create a new project. And again, we'll give it some information. This will be typically done by the quality manager, or the person creating the report. And I'll just say, hey, plot number 4, who's our vendor, maybe a vendor part number, who's the author, what's the priority, and go. So again, we're just setting ourselves up with a lot of standardized documentation for our company. And so now over here in the quality folder, you'll see we now have a new project with all the standard documentation ready to go for our quality control. So that's a nice way to quickly get ourselves set up. Now, if you're dealing with files from a supplier, you don't necessarily have that benefit of creating the reports from your SOLIDWORKS drawing file. So in that situation, if we go to a project that's already sort of been started, you'll see that this project is actually in our standalone environment of inspection, and it's leveraging a PDF file. So with the PDF, how we pull out those characteristics is through optical character recognition. So this project's already underway, but if we added a little bit more, so it's really almost just as quick as what you saw inside SOLIDWORKS, where I can just say I want to pull off a dimension that I want as a characteristic. And it's just really a window select. It will see what it is, give it its tolerances. We can pick off geometric tolerances as well. And let's do one more dimension over here. And so now we've got all of our characteristics built up. You see how smart it is to say that, oh yeah, that is a radius dimension. What's the value, and what are the upper and lower limits, and then again, input any extra data you need here. So again, we've got a report ready to go. What's really nice about inspection, though, is you can actually perform the inspection right inside this software. So if you were using, let's say, a CMM machine, we can pull that data in to inspection. So here's some TCDMIS documents or files from our CMM machine. And then we can do is auto-assign to our characteristics. In this case, we use item number. And then you can see over here on the left, or on the lower right, I guess, is the numbers being brought in. We're automatically color coding the characteristics to the value, so whether they're pass, fail, or nominal. And so now we can actually export a complete first article inspection report using a similar function where we're just going to export the PDF of the balloon drawing, nicely color coded, which is a great deliverable to the client potentially, or to the shop floor, and then
or to the supplier. You know, if you want to give that feedback, close that loop, and help your supplier get better at supplying you with high quality parts, it would be extremely helpful to have this info.
All right, so that's how we're going to generate the inspection for that lot, let's say. And then if we back out to PDM, again, what we could do is, if we want to take that another step, we could go through and say, let's create another lot. We're getting another load of parts. We could do the similar thing where it's going to go grab my next lot number. We'd probably use the same part numbers we had before. And any other pertinent information. This is revision G, and so on, and then we hit OK again, and it's going to create another subfolder with all those for another inspection report. So at this point, you're going to end up, if you have a lot, if you're dealing with the same or different suppliers but for the same part, you might want to start to look for trends that are happening with the quality. So let's go up to one that's a little more complete again. Here we have a lot of different lots that have been inspected. And I want to pull that all together. So what Javelin's developed is a nice way to report on this. And we simply say update the data. So it's going to go through and look in all those subfolders, all the different lots, and pull all the data together here in one place. Next, you want to start analyzing the data. So let's maybe do a filtering on everything. So we can now maybe just pull off, let's just concentrate on characteristic 1 for now. And so now we can start to look at the supplier, between the differences between supplier and A and B, and maybe we want to graph this out as far as what's the inspected means and compare it to our desired means and upper and lower critical limits. And we'll do something like that. So now we can start to see some trends happening with our parts as we get them.
So the idea is to leverage the enterprise PDM database as a central store for this info, and then Javelin, what we've done is make this as easy as possible to make sense of that info. Because if you have it, you know, an alternative would be to manage all of this in huge centralized Excel sheets which can be very cumbersome to go and filter through and tough to update. So a central database makes a whole lot of sense to centralize that and make it scalable. So we have a couple more headaches. We are kind of close to the half hour, but that's okay. We'll hopefully you're okay going a little bit over. We'll go through these fairly quick here. But we wanted to talk about one related to assembly. So we do have a number of clients that if the parts are correct, isn't necessarily the full picture. You need to make sure they're assembled correctly and consistently. So they want to make sure that those are done the same if there's different assemblies, and even if it's the same person done over and over again the same way, or even capture that tribal knowledge is pretty key as well. So the way that we can overcome this migraine is really about leveraging the 3D information. So we've had clients that are actually in some cases doing away with assembly drawings and moving towards just clear assembly instructions, because that's at the end of the day what's most important. And we want to deliver that to production in a way that makes it done consistently and as fast as possible.
So let's look at a couple of examples of this. This is all content generated from SOLIDWORKS Composer. The key here is that we're leveraging that 3D engineering data and repurposing it for things like an assembly procedure. This is a more traditional, maybe paper document that you might have. And again, you might see some differences from a typical engineering drawing with some nicer graphics potentially. Another important thing for me is the fact that I can incorporate different models, tools and such that you might use to assemble it that are not actually part of the product. We can merge into our Composer document. And everything stays tied together. So as design changes happen, the information can flow from engineering, from your SOLIDWORKS, through the Composer and right out to the documentation that we're providing for whoever. So again, some great functions of putting in images, putting in some text, the little symbols and part numbers, leveraging our metadata again that's moving from engineering through our EPDM system into all this documentation nice and cleanly. So we're eliminating any duplicate data entry and so on. So that's one nice way to deliver that. Another way people are starting to move more and more these days is getting more interactive, where maybe you want to have on the shop floor an interactive procedure on a touch screen, or maybe it's a tablet for a guy that's actually on site that needs to install these things. So here's an example where we're showing them, so we're reducing the wordiness of a document by actually showing them step by step in an animated way. But it's more than just an animation, because it is a full viewer that I can actually look around this and zoom in on something if I wanted to clarify things for myself. So we reduce the ambiguity in a drawing this way. And move through. Again, you'll see how we're pulling in these other models, taking advantage of some different techniques like zooming in. You'll see next a nice little detailer that will pop up, so I can look at the overall effect, but be showing a little bit closer what that next step is. All right, and so that's one example. I thought I'd show you maybe one more, which is something like this. This is great for even more of a marketing type of interface, where maybe you want to show how things work when they get assembled, or some options for the end user. What are the different types of materials we want to apply? How does this thing actually work? And I can choose any combination of colors and motion for the product. But again, back to the assembly procedure, or maybe a service guy on site needs to change something. So here's an animated version. It is still in the viewer, so I could look around, but you might want to just save it as a simple ABI. To create these animations is a breeze. It's really a lot of drag and drop functionality of your views that you probably made for your document, and adding a few extra keys, maybe adding a few notes here and there to help explain what's being shown here. So in this example, we're pulling out the motor underneath the seat here. So in a second, we'll see how we pull that motor out, and we're going to replace it with a new revised model.
Yeah, the power of assembly like this without words is just so key that it's goes across all different languages, requires no translation, but most importantly, is just so easy to interpret that you have people who are assembling on the shop floor that do it consistently all the time, and they don't spend any time trying to interpret it or look at the information because it's just so clear where it is. So, huge time saver and really manages that headache well. And then the last headache we wanted to talk about today was on managing change. So just change in general. It can just be so cumbersome when change happens to keep things in sync, and also be able to track and identify what root causes are to be able to do good long-term decisions over time as well. So to relieve this particular headache, what we do typically recommend with our clients is to implement a standardized engineering change request workflow, so an electronic workflow specific for engineering change requests. And we also recommend associating data together. So, assembly part associations happen automatically, but you can associate any file to any file, and we would recommend doing that for anything that's related, so that's very easy to track down what needs to be updated when change happens.
So again, let's actually log out as myself as the designer again, because this would be probably a job that a manager would be more likely to do. So let's go back inside EPDM as Mike. And let's dig into the project that we have a concern with. And it's one of those documents, but actually let's put it in the right folder structure. Let's create an engineering change request here in my documentation folder. Again, we'll leverage the template. So we're going to start an engineering change document. Again, give it the pertinent information, like this is going to be maybe a customer request. What's the urgency? Is it billable? Requester is already populated for me. And then the description. So need lighter design. And then who does this affect? It's going to affect engineering, maybe quality, and manufacturing, because these triggers, these checkboxes could trigger different things. Who might be notified of this engineering change request potentially? So we hit OK, and again, it creates the document. So this document here pertains to probably an engineering file. So let's find that instead of browsing to it. Let's do another quick search, and we're going to search for the part number 227. And again, we quickly are showing anything in this case by file name, anything that has the number 227 in it, what it pertains to. So what I'm going to do is simply use some Windows functions to copy it. And if we go back to our engineering request, we're going to paste it as a reference. And so already you're starting to see how we'll always be able to track this easily by when we pick on this document, be showing that it refers to that drawing file, and so on with all the other references you'll see more in a minute. The other nice feature about doing this sort of referencing is that things happen automatically. If I open up this document, you'll notice that the document itself has grabbed the next engineering change number for me. It's put in the appropriate users, put in descriptions, and even put a reference to the document that it pertains to in my case. And so now within Word, maybe we're happy with this document, but now we're ready to actually submit it or issue it to engineering. So from in the interface here, we'll check it into the system. And then we're going to take advantage of that workflow again to say, let's issue it to engineering. It's going to come up with the interface. And again, here's where you get a great view of all the referenced files. So we see that engineering change request document refers to our engineering drawing, which in turn references the assemblies and so on. In my case, I'm going to select who it's going to go to. So I'm going to send it to Scott. And comments is the history, giving it more information that we can report on. And so we're going to see needs design work. And notification, please review the ECR. So that's the message that that Scott's going to get when he logs in next. And so again, if we look at the documents inside EPDM, we take a look at the workflow that it's part of. You can see that engineering change request has been approved by the engineering manager and been submitted, so it's going to be waiting now for them to do the work, to come back to approve it, and actually do the release of that document. And in turn, also, the files that were actually attached to it will now be sitting in a work-in-progress state, waiting for you to make those design changes so that they can now do the work.
So managing change with this technology is just so much easier than it was in the past. So quality managers are finding that that their headache gets relieved. You know, at the end of the day, they want to make it easier for themselves and easier for the team to know what's happening and all be on the same page. Right? So if you are new to Javelin, we're likely your supplier of SolidWorks. We did invite mostly customers to this, so we appreciate you attending. We are coast to coast that can help you throughout extended hours, and just a tremendous amount of experience on the technical side to help you out. A little bit about our philosophy is we look at 4 key areas when we are helping our customers through any sort of change in processes or technology. And it's about the people, so we need to make sure that your people have the right expertise. We're capturing and leveraging the knowledge that you guys have today, and planning for the future and helping with recruiting along the way. We want to make sure the right technology is in place to help with your, related to quality, making sure that the technology that will make it as easy as possible to manage your specific quality-related headache can make all the difference. Processes, when it comes to quality, processes are just so key. We want to capture your processes, and we want to help you manage and enforce those in as easy a way as possible. And a big aspect is manufacturing. So we want to make sure that no matter what we're doing along the way, we're thinking about manufacturing and making sure that they are getting what they need when they need it, and it's as efficient as possible. So all in all, we can help through any transition. And today's topic related to quality, hopefully you saw today that there's a number of areas that are really pertinent to quality management that can make a big difference. So appreciate you for attending. We'll